might men dislike the most if they were to become women? Story 1. Going to the doctor, specifically in pain at the ER, or getting a procedure such as a DAMP-C or IUD placed without pain medication. Story 2. Being invalidated and disbelieved about your everyday lived experiences. My father doesn't believe that violence against women exists, even though my sister is a women's studies professor, and my mother legally defends victims of domestic abuse. Story 3. Anger suppression. I feel like there are very limited places where it is societally accepted to rage as a woman. Story 4. Having people just walk up to me and demand my attention and then act like I'm an unpleasant person or get mad if I don't really want to engage. When my wife is alone, she just gets approached randomly, and I've seen it happen from afar. People act like she exists just to interact with them. She's been cornered in rooms by men and felt like she can't leave, and plenty of women have had that same experience. I haven't felt trapped or cornered or have had someone make me physically uncomfortable since I was a young child and would not ever want to feel that way again. Story 5. If my ex-husband was to be believed, periods. He said that you were disgusting and complained endlessly about all the poor stuff to do with hygiene products. Also bitterly complained about being deprived of close relationship foe that 5-day time. I'm a very, very clean person, would hand wash anything bloodstained before putting it in the laundry. I used to wish he could go through it for perspective. He was married twice more than I know of. I always wondered how the next two coped. Story 6. Probably being catcalled and being scared for your own safety all the no time. And everyone having an opinion about how you should look. Or victim blaming, and I could go on. Period probably 2. Story 7. Not being taken seriously, and when you call attention to it, you're being assumed to be ignorant about a subject you have expertise in. Being infantilized. Your hobbies and interests, if feminine-coded, will be seen as lesser. Even when you take up a masculine hobby, you will be constantly questioned. You won't be listened to because people assume you don't have any clue what you're talking about. Your concerns will be seen as minimal or lesser. You will be seen as nagging when you bring up a real concern. You bring it up again and again, and nothing. You will be ignored and dismissed by doctors. You'll feel very small in this world. Story 8. Being grossly invalidated or ignored for specifically reproductive treatments during hospital visits, but also for general health issues. Story 9. No one ever listening to you, ever. Everything you say is questioned, or you say things at work, and everyone acts as if they've gone spontaneously deaf until a man says the same thing. If you say someone assaulted you, you'll get asked, "Are you sure?" Ad nauseum. Forever. About everything. You will never just be believed. Never. Someone will always ignore, belittle, or question you. Story 10. Your entire worth in the majority of the population's eyes revolves around on when if you're going to have children. Story 11. Periods like mine. Nausea, vomiting, back pain, leg pain, cramps. Changing pads, tampons, cups every few hours. They last 12 hours? Ha! Cravings while still nauseated. Constipation followed by diarrhea back and forth. Extreme anemia with spells of passing out. Extreme fatigue. Migraines. 10 days of this? No! Even my husband was shocked, and he grew up with girls. He straight up told me he would have self-exited if he had to deal with it every single month. It's not the gift of life. It's a monthly illness that everyone expects you to work through because it isn't contagious. Story 12. Being treated like they are stupid and helpless. Being less physically strong than men. Facing anger if they do not respond receptively to a stranger's compliments or advances. Being condescended to on a daily basis. Story 13. I once went to a boy bar in a dress. While waiting at the bar for a drink, someone passed behind me and placed both hands on my hips as they did. This has never once happened to me while dressed as a dude. If you're a guy and you do this to women femmes, that out immediately. Edit. I've never had a comment blow up like this. I guess I should respond to the more prominent replies. First of all, cow. Secondly, thank you everyone for sharing your experiences. While the original question was about men experiencing life as women, it seems universal that anybody of any gender identity can be both perpetrator or victim of unwanted physical contact and close relationship assault. We should all use this information to be more mindful of how we treat and touch others. Third, if you shared an experience that was essentially, I'm a guy and this happened to me and I kind of liked it, so it wasn't a big deal. I'll say that your feelings are valid, but also not helpful to the overall discussion of how to treat each other more respectfully. And an isolated incident is much different from the systematic most women face for most of their lives. Fourthly, I absolutely in no way want to compare wearing a dress in a boy bar to the experiences women face on a daily basis. The sole intent of my original comment is to point out that this has never happened to me while presenting masculine and only happens to me when I present feminine. I'm only extrapolating that life as a CIS woman would be like this constantly, and the vast majority of replies seem to support that. Fifth, in a loud bar or concert or similar setting, I'm going to say a light tap on the shoulder and an excuse me is acceptable. Don't cup or grab or even use the whole hand. This is only my personal opinion. Overall, regardless of your gender identity, none of us should be presuming it's all right to touch anyone else without their consent. And if you do and you upset someone, take responsibility, apologize sincerely, and learn from the experience. None of us are angels or saints, but how you respond to growth opportunities like this is how your character is defined. Story 14. People not taking you seriously by default, tied with being literally in fear for your safety as a default setting. They are both awful. Oh, another is having to pretend to not be in terrible pain, because we are all supposed to pretend periods don't happen, or at least are NBD. Another is doctors not taking you seriously, and most medical treatments being designed by and for men. Oh, and most items in general. Crash test dummies are modeled on men. Phones are designed to fit male hands and pockets. Which brings me to my last one, pockets. Women's clothes and their missing tiny pockets. Drops mic. Because the mic won't fit in her useless microscopic pants pocket. Story 15. Along these same lines, I have a coworker who is MF trans. I thought she was a bit of an peach before transition, and she is still a bit of an peach. Nothing changed. She still has the same exact personality. You talk to some other coworkers now, though, and they all, I could deal with her before transition. We could got along. Now she is a bad person, though, and I can't stand her. Literally, nothing changed except her outward appearance. Story 16. The geometric growth in the likelihood of close relationship assault and harassment from unknown or known individuals. Story 17. Besides the obvious physical issues, the way we can be talked over and ignored, the way others can get props for our work. When they try to be assertive, the criticism they would receive. Essay would be an eye-opener. Story 18. Trans man here. I've lived as both a man and a woman in my adult life. A couple of things. Women don't get taken very seriously in a lot of aspects, especially in certain subcultures. I grew up in the American South, and there was always still a lot of, oh, sweetie, type patronization that I just haven't experienced as a man, and I think a lot of men would be wholly unprepared for it. Not that every man is always taken seriously, but a lot of men I've known are generally used to being at least listened to when they've had a complaint or something, for instance at work. Secondly, women also are expected to be pleasing and accommodating and not raise a fuss or be rude. A great example I have was when I was working, living as a woman, as a vet tech in a very rural place. I was up front with two other technicians, a man and a woman, when a client came in the door. He was an old man who we all recognized, and he would talk a lot, just about the good old days and folks he used to know and all that. Every time he was in, and we were busy, he came up and started chatting with all of us, and about 30 seconds later, my male coworker just kind of waved and walked away. The woman and I, bound by our upbringings, felt compelled to stand there going, oh wow, that's so interesting, for the next hour, while trying to gently steer the conversation towards us leaving and getting back to work. But if we had done the same thing as he did, it would have been rude, and we definitely would have been scolded. Lastly, but really in the same vein as the previous bullet point, there's a lot of difficulty if you want to be direct about something as a woman. When I lived as a woman, I'd hear from my husband, you need to march on down into your boss's office and tell him, this is how it has to be. You can't do X and Y and more. That's not okay, and so on. He didn't seem to understand that the reaction to pretty much any woman doing that is immediately going to be, ugh, what a bad person, and nobody will ever listen to the rest. Even if you're making a good point, it doesn't matter. Those are just some things that come to mind. For what it's worth, living as a man does come with some unique challenges too. Story 19? Random hookups or casual partners are unlikely to care about your pleasure, so they'd quickly lose interest in casual, close relationship. Story 20. Not feeling safe enough to go for a midnight or even daytime stroll, having to constantly be aware of surroundings. Story 21. How the world perceives you. If you're passionate as a man, you're hysterical as a woman. You show any temper, must be that time of the month. Even if you are a leader in your field, your opinion isn't as good as your male counterpart because you have ovaries and not testicles. Being afraid or at least cautious when outside, by yourself at night, not being able to pee standing up. Story 22. Realizing that it doesn't matter how good you are at something. People will tell you you're not, and tell you to do it. Worse, from a technical point of view. Story 23. The fact the men in your life tell you to your face they love you and care about you, but will show you the opposite when discussing your bodily autonomy. Story 24. Being treated like women. It's one of the main drivers of hatred emo. These men don't like the idea of being looked at by boy men the way straight men look at women. Rights and freedoms aside, this is a core cause of a lot of what we see. Story 25. I could deal with the personal stuff, but just generally the lack of respect from both other women and men. Story 26. the unwanted attention or uncomfortable stares from men that many women experience. It's a significant source of discomfort and unease. Being subject to the male gaze and dealing with the scrutiny of one's appearance or body language is really an unsettling experience. Story 27. How much less they would be able to eat. Men's metabolisms are insane. If I eat anything like my brother or father, I'd be packing on the pounds. Story 28. Not being taken seriously and being constantly undermined by colleagues, by bosses, by instructors, and worst of all, by your partners and your doctors. Story 29. As a man, it would most definitely be the objectifying and safety concerns. I have a 2.5-year daughter, and I'm terrified for her in this world. Story 30. Trans dude here, so I'm specially equipped to answer this question. They would not like having their knowledge and expertise questioned constantly. Even if, and perhaps especially if, they are experts in their field, they would not like being ignored, talked over, and interrogated. I see so many men who are believed and trusted simply because they speak confidently, even if they are full of cow. On a lighter note, I think they would equally dislike the pressure to actually wash their hands with soap after using a public bathroom. It is absolutely appalling how few do. Story 31. The worst part isn't mansplaining or periods or money. It's fear. When women refuse should be required reading for all men. And not just a quick look-see. Join it. Spend some cumulative hours on that sub. Really steep yourself in our reality. Read it until you feel sick. Until you look at the men around you a little differently. All your buddies, all your co-workers, all your mentors and idols. Until you can't help but wonder, what is he capable of? What has he done? What does he want to do? That is a glimpse at what it's like to be a woman. Story 32. Being hit on by the dumbest, ugliest, stinkiest fools who think they are king cow and get all surprised angry when they get rejected. Period also don't sound like fun. Having babies also seems like cow. I wouldn't like it at all. Story 33. They'd hate everything. The effort what it costs to be a woman, to be a beautiful woman or less good-looking woman. They'd hate to be judged too thick, too thin, too flat, too fat. They'd hate the attention once they realize how much it is. Banana pics, once they realize how many DMs are basically all meaningless, because people just want to fudge you, or God knows what else. The fact that their bros would easily now just see them as an easy access to fudge, because hey, bros still help each other out, right? Menstruation, harassment, pregnancy, the things you see online, random nice guys, catcalling, incels, alpha males who try to explain your own anatomy to you, or how you should behave or why you behave. You will be seen more often as second-class citizens. Your opinions are invalid, cause duh. Women emotional, right fellas? They'd also realize just because crying for us women is normalized, it doesn't mean society doesn't shame us almost as equally for that as men. Everything that's linked to your gender is now becoming an insult, and so on and so forth. It's always too much or never enough. They'd soon come to hate it. In fact, I am convinced that most men would never want to be in our shoes either way. They'd enjoy finally touching themselves as a woman, but what after that? They'd all realize soon how much of a lose-lose deal it is. Story 34. The pink tax. Haircuts cost more. Blouses cost more than dress shirts. Period products. Dry cleaning costs more. Facial products cost more. Story 35. You know that thing that happens when you say something. It gets completely ignored and talked over by all men and some women in the group, and then a man says it, and everyone reacts positively to his idea. The first time it happens, it's fine. The first time you see it happen to another woman in your life, it sucks, but it's fine. But someday, you're going to see it happen. And watching that woman just shut down in response and accept being deemed not worthy of even a chance to be heard, and you're going to realize you do the same. It is going to destroy you. Story 36. The expectation to be pleasant and accommodating at all times. It's so against the male ethos to be as self-sacrificing as women are expected to be. Story 37. ITT men's responses to what it's like to be a woman, not knowing how bad it actually is. The worst thing about being a woman is the patriarchy, and women being inherently expected to cater basically in every aspect to men. At home, we are expected to do literally everything. When children come, we are expected to do everything. Even at work, we have to act like men to get ahead. People saying periods, bras, and catcalling just do, not get it. Story 38. Misogyny. Have fun with that one, guys. Can't imagine you'd last long before suddenly you're all interested in changing legislation. Reading the comments here about discrimination, close relationship harassment, and violence. And to think the big issue on the reverse of this thread was potentially sitting on your balls. Story 39. Worrying about being physically taken and getting assaulted. Getting passed over for a promotion because you're a woman. Having people make very intrusive comments on your uterus. Getting judged for not wanting kids. I am 59 and I do not miss my period. At all.